Hello, everyone. This is Miss Bauman again from Hyde Park. I'm so glad to see you again, or I'm so glad to be with you even though I can't be with you. But yesterday, you had started reading your story, How Did That Get in My Lunchbox? So today we're going to finish that story. Yesterday, you read about bread and cheese, and you learned how that gets into your lunchbox. Well, today you're going to learn about some other foods like tomatoes, apples, carrots, and clementines. So if you will get your book, and we will start reading on page 292. So get your HMH. This is my book. It looks a little different, but I want to make sure you're following along with me as I read. The great thing about a video is you can pause it. If you ever get lost or you're not sure about something, or maybe you kind of dazed off, you can pause the video. That's the great thing. And you can scroll back and you can listen to that part again. And it's just like when we actually read, okay? Just like we do when we reread because something didn't make sense the first time. So I will be asking you some questions after each page. And some of those questions are on your lesson plans that you can write the answer to or discuss it with someone. Please feel free to pause the video to think about those answers, and then maybe you can even write them down. So let's get started. You'll actually be listening to the computer read, and I'm going to have the screen up showing the page, but I do want you to use your book if you can. So I'm going to switch over to that screen. Here we go. All right, so we should be on page 292. And the heading for this page is How Did Your Tomatoes Get in Your Lunchbox? So let's listen for the reader.
How did your tomatoes get in your lunchbox? Last summer, your tomatoes were growing in a big plastic tunnel full of tomato plants. The sun and the warmth made the plants grow tall and bloom with yellow flowers. As each flower died, a tiny green tomato fruit began to grow from its middle.
So let's think, why might summer be the best time for tomatoes to grow? Why might summer be the best time for tomatoes to grow? Well, it said that tomatoes need sun and they need warmth. So summer is the warmest and it has a lot of sun, so that is the best season to grow tomatoes. Let's go to the next page and find out some more about tomatoes.
Day by day, the plants sucked up water and the tomatoes swelled from green to orange to red. When bunches of ripe scarlet tomatoes dangled from the branches, the grower picked them, sorted them, packed them, and sent them to the store. Pop one in your mouth and squish the sweet sour juice out. Scarlet. If something is scarlet, it is a bright red color.
Okay, so if you'll look at this illustration of the conveyor belt, this is called a conveyor belt right here. What is happening to the tomatoes there? What's happening in this step of the tomatoes? Well, that looks like they're being sorted. So they're looking for the good ones and the bad ones. They're sorting them out so that we get the healthiest tomatoes. Now, if you look at this page and the previous page, we'll go and look at both here. What is the difference about the way the author organized this process? So on this page, it looks a little different than when he talked about cheese. I'm pointing with my arrow to the difference here. What is different about the page where they talked about cheese from where the author talked about tomatoes? Well, the previous page about cheese had numbers, had actual steps with little bubbles, and they even pointed to what it was referring to. On this page, it was just paragraphs. They told you it kind of in a story form. So the author's kind of mixing it up on us here. presenting it in a little different way to make it more interesting. So let's go to the next page. This is about apples. How did your apple juice get in your lunchbox? Now this one's really cool. Listen up.
How did your apple juice get in your lunchbox? Last spring, the apple trees in the orchard were full of flowers. In summer, tiny apple buds grew from each flower stalk. The buds kept growing, and by autumn, the trees were full of ripe, sweet fruit. Pickers climbed into the trees and filled their bins with fruit. A truck took the bins to the juice factory, where sorters threw out any rotten apples. 1. Then a machine washed the rest. 2. And mashed them in a milling machine, seeds, skin, and all. 3. A huge press squeezed the mash till all its juice ran out. 4. A heater warmed up the juice to kill off any germs. 5. And poured it into cartons. Suck hard on your straw to taste the apple tang.
Okay, so let's stop and think. Let's pause. How did the info about apples on these pages change or add to what you have already learned about how food is grown? So your answers might vary. Different people have different answers, but this is about you. There's no right or wrong answer. It's just asking how this information about how apple juice is made has changed or added to what you have already learned. Did you know this about apples? Has it changed what you thought about your apple juice? Did it add to what you're already learning? So talk about what you thought about this process of apple juice being made. Well, I actually thought it would be the same process. I thought all these were going to be pretty much the same process, but there are a lot of similarities, but there's a lot of differences. This one is going through a factory, and it looks like the tomatoes went through a certain kind of factory. It looks like more people are involved with the tomatoes, but it looks like the apples has a lot of machinery that it goes through. So, but they're also picking the apples, kind of like they did with the tomatoes. They picked those too. So there's some similarities about these foods, and there's some differences. I'm learning a whole lot myself. So I want you to also think about the text structure on these pages. Now, you've heard that from your teacher, hopefully this year, and I'm going to give you two options. The text structure, is it sequence, or are they comparing and contrasting? This is actually sequence, because they are going in order of the process in which a food gets to your lunchbox. So why did they use sequence instead of just comparing and contrasting? Well, they wanted to give you step by step all the process, not just a general summary or just a one-page comparison. They're actually giving you lots of details. So they actually sequenced the process from beginning to end. It wouldn't make sense if they jumbled it up. So sequence is the best choice for writing this kind of story, this kind of informational text. So if we'll go to the next page, we'll learn about how carrots get in your lunchbox.
How did your carrots get in your lunchbox? Last spring, your carrots were growing in a field on a vegetable farm. You wouldn't have seen any carrots then, just long rows of feathery leaves. As the leaves grew taller in the summer sun, each carrot root pushed deeper into the earth, soaking up water and turning orange. By late summer, they had swelled so much that the top of each carrot poked out of the earth. Pickers pulled them up. Then the carrots were washed and packed into trucks. Bite into your carrot. See just how sweet and crunchy it tastes.
Wow, so what is a similarity and a difference between picking apples and picking carrots? What's something that's similar and something that's different? Well, just like I said about the apples, the farmer is picking the carrots by hand. Okay, they're both hand-picked, but a difference is that the carrots are pulled out of the ground and the apples are picked from a tree. So that's a little different. And then the process in which the carrots are actually processed through this factory is a little different as well. So this is just really cool information. I never thought this deeply about where my food came from. Have you? This is really interesting. Okay, we have one more to talk about, and it's about clementines. Do you know what a clementine is? Let's find out.
How did your clementine get in your lunchbox? Early in summer, the trees in the clementine grove were full of sweet-smelling waxy flowers. As the flowers died, a tiny green clementine berry began to grow out of each one. The clementines swelled in the warm sun, turning from green to yellow. By the time cooler winter weather arrived, the clementines had turned orange and were so heavy and full of juice that they made the branches droop. Grove. A grove is a group of trees that are close to one another. Pickers climbed ladders to reach them. They had to wear gloves so they didn't bruise the tender fruit inside the skin. They washed them and packed them, and the growers sent the boxes in trucks to the market. It's easy to peel a clementine. Then all you have to do is pop the juicy pieces into your mouth and bite. Most clementines are seedless.
So, what surprised you about clementines? Think about what surprised you about learning about clementines. I didn't know that they turn into small berries. Did you? I didn't know that the process is fairly simple for harvesting clementines. It doesn't seem like they go into a factory like the other foods. They just pick them, make sure that they're not bruised. They wash them and pack them and send them to the market from there. So clementines, the process of those getting to your lunchbox, it seems a little bit easier than some of the other foods we've learned about. Well, I have one more question for you to just see how well you were listening, or if you can find it in the story. How do clementine pickers use color to decide when the fruit is ready to pick? How do they use color? How do they know they're ready to pick? Well, when they're green, they're not ready. They're still a berry. When it is yellow, it is growing, but it's not ripe. It's not fully ripe to pick. But when it's orange, they know that it is ready. So instead of having to peel it and see if it's ready, the outside of the clementine helps them know, yes, I'm ready to pick. How interesting. Okay, let's turn to our last page of the story, page 300. Here we go.
You've eaten it all, from the first bite of bread to the last piece of fruit. It came from fields and farms, from orchards, from groves, and from dairies. So many people helped bring it to you: farmers and bakers, cheesemakers, pickers, packers, and truck drivers. And now it's all in your stomach, starting to do the job that food does, helping you grow taller and stronger, and giving you get up and go.
Wow, what a neat story. So before we end this video today, I want to talk about what the central idea or the main idea of this text was. What do you think the whole idea, the central idea of this whole text was about? Well, it was about how food gets into your lunchbox. All these different kinds of food, and the details were the actual foods and how the process was to get them to the store and to you. So if you'll turn to this next, well, I don't have a picture of it, but if you'll turn to page 301, I will come back to this. It's page 301 in your book. If you will do those questions 1, 2, and 3, and then show that to your parent or whoever you're working with at home. And that will be a good wrap up of this story. So I'm so glad to see you today. I hope you enjoyed this story, learning all the information about how food gets into your lunchbox. And have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.